Captain Sarah Chen was having a perfectly normal Tuesday morning when everything went sideways. She sat in her command chair aboard the Terran survey ship Wanderlust, watching the stars drift by through the main view screen while sipping her third cup of coffee. The ship was on a routine mapping mission in the outer rim of unexplored space, the kind of boring assignment that paid well but made everyone sleepy. "Captain, we're picking up some unusual readings," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station. He was a young engineer who got excited about everything, especially if it involved new technology or weird space phenomena. "Define unusual," Sarah said, not really worried. In 15 years of deep space exploration, she had learned that most unusual readings turned out to be space rocks or old probe signals. Multiple large ships, maybe 30 or 40 of them. "They're huge, Captain. Each one is at least 3 times. Bigger than us." Rodriguez's voice had that tone that meant he was trying not to sound scared. Sarah set down her coffee and walked over to look at his screen. The sensor readings showed a massive fleet of ships arranged in perfect formation. They were definitely artificial, definitely advanced, and definitely not human. "Well, that's interesting," she said calmly. "First contact protocols, people. Dr. Kim, wake up the linguistics computer. Jenkins, start recording everything. Martinez, see if you can figure out what kind of technology they're using." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, even though none of them had ever actually encountered alien life before. They had trained for this moment, but everyone secretly thought it would never happen. 30 seconds later, the main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The image showed a tall, imposing figure in elaborate armor covered with spikes and glowing symbols. The alien had 4 arms, pale blue skin, and eyes that glowed red with menace. Behind him stood rows of similar beings, all looking very serious and threatening. Primitive beings of the small vessel. The alien spoke in perfect English, his voice deep and commanding. "I am Admiral Zex Thera of the Eternal Dominion, flagship of the Galactic Empire. You have entered Imperial space without permission. This is a crime punishable by immediate destruction." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen, processing what they had just heard. First contact with an alien civilization, and they were already being threatened. Sarah looked at the alien admiral for a long moment, then burst out laughing. "Oh my God, you're serious," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Jenkins, are you getting this? Please tell me you're recording." Admiral Zexathira's glowing eyes flickered with confusion. "You dare mock the Imperial Navy? We are the masters of 1,000 worlds. Entire species tremble at our approach." I'm sorry, Sarah said, trying to compose herself. "It's just, look at you. You look like someone took a Halloween costume and bedazzled it. What's with all the spikes? Are you going to a Space Gothic convention?" Dr. Kim, the ship's xenobiologist, leaned forward in her chair. "Captain, from an anthropological perspective, this is fascinating. The aggressive posturing, the elaborate costume design, the threats of violence as an opening gambit. It's classic intimidation behavior." "Thank you, Dr. Kim. Very educational." Sarah turned back to the screen where Admiral Zexathira was looking increasingly frustrated. "So, Admiral Spike-a-Lot, what exactly do you want from us?" "You will surrender your vessel immediately," the Admiral demanded. "Your crew will be processed for Imperial service or termination. Your technology will be claimed for the Empire." Lieutenant Rodriguez snorted with laughter. "Did he just say processed? What are we, cheese?" "I think he means enslaved," said Martinez from the weapons station. "Though honestly, looking at their ship design, I'm not sure they could process a sandwich correctly." On the screen, they could see other aliens in the background looking confused and whispering to each other. This was clearly not how first contact usually went for them. "Look, Admiral," Sarah said, settling back in her chair with her coffee. "I appreciate the whole Dark Overlord thing you've got going on. Really, it's very theatrical. But we're just out here mapping space rocks and drinking coffee. We're not really interested in being conquered today. You refuse? Admiral Zexthyra sputtered. No species has ever refused imperial dominion. It is unthinkable. Well, think harder, said Dr. Kim cheerfully. We're humans. We specialize in doing unthinkable things. It's kind of our whole deal. Jenkins, the communications officer, raised his hand. Captain, should I be transmitting our location back to Earth Command? You know, just in case these guys decide to get aggressive? Already done, Sarah replied. Automated distress beacon went out the moment we detected them. Standard protocol. Admiral Zexthyra's expression shifted to something like panic. You contacted your homeworld? You have doomed your entire species. The Empire will crush your planet as an example to all who would defy us. The entire bridge crew burst out laughing this time. Even Quiet Martinez was chuckling while he ran diagnostics on their defensive systems. Oh, buddy, Sarah said, shaking her head. You really don't know what you're dealing with, do you? Earth isn't some peaceful little farming world. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We got so good at killing each other that we had to invent new ways to do it. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against imperial might, the Admiral declared, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Primitive? Rodriguez looked offended. Captain, can I show him the specs on our point defense system? Just the basic stuff? Sure. Why not? Education is important. Rodriguez tapped his console and transmitted a simple technical schematic. On the alien ship, they could see technicians looking at displays and talking rapidly to each other in their own language. That's just our mining laser array, Rodriguez explained cheerfully. We use it to break up asteroids for mineral extraction. The actual weapons are classified, but they're much more interesting. Admiral Zexthyra was now visibly sweating, despite his intimidating appearance. Behind him, his crew was having what looked like an urgent discussion. You know what I think happened here? Dr. Kim said, conversationally. I think you guys have been bullying peaceful civilizations for so long that you forgot what actual military technology looks like. You've been using fear and intimidation instead of actual capability. That would explain the costume design, Martinez added. All flash, no substance. Sarah finished her coffee and stood up. Admiral, here's what's going to happen. We're going to continue with our mission. You're going to let us go. And maybe, just maybe, we can pretend this embarrassing little encounter never happened. The Empire does not negotiate with inferiors, Admiral Zexthyra said, but his voice shook slightly. That's your problem right there, Sarah replied. You assume everyone else is inferior. Classic mistake. Jenkins, open a channel to the rest of their fleet. Channel open, Captain. Sarah smiled at the screen. Attention, Imperial Fleet. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran survey ship Wanderlust. We're peaceful explorers who accidentally wandered into your space. We're happy to leave quietly, but if you insist on being hostile, well, she shrugged. We've dealt with bullies before. The transmission ended, leaving the aliens staring at a blank screen and the humans getting back to their routine duties. In the background, sensor readings showed the Imperial fleet maintaining position, but making no aggressive moves. Captain, Rodriguez said quietly, what if they actually attack? Sarah smiled and sat back down. Then they're going to learn why humans don't make good victims. Admiral Zexthyra stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his forearms clenched in frustration. Never in his 300 years of service had he encountered such disrespectful behavior. These humans had laughed at him. Laughed. The very thought made his glowing eyes burn brighter with anger. Admiral, his second-in-command spoke carefully. Perhaps we should consult with Imperial Command before proceeding. These humans seem different. Different. The Admiral's voice boomed across the bridge. They are primitives who stumbled into our territory. I will not be humiliated by such creatures. He turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the annihilation cannon. We will demonstrate Imperial power. The weapons officer hesitated. Sir, should we not first attempt to destroy their ship? The annihilation cannon is designed for planetary bombardment. No, Admiral Zex-Thyra said firmly. These humans think our power is a joke. We will show them what true devastation looks like. Target the large asteroid in Sector 7. Full power. Aboard the Wanderlust, the crew watched with interest as the massive Imperial flagship began to glow with energy. Warning lights flashed across their sensors as the alien ship charged some kind of enormous weapon. Captain, Martinez called from his station. They're powering up something big. Energy readings are off the charts. Are they targeting us? Sarah asked, though she seemed more curious than worried. No, they're aiming at that asteroid cluster about 50,000 kilometers away. The big one in the middle. Dr. Kim clapped her hands together excitedly. Oh, they're going to show off. This is perfect. We get to see their weapon technology in action without anyone getting hurt. Jenkins, are you recording? Sarah asked. Everything, Captain. Full spectrum analysis. The Imperial flagship's main cannon fired, and space lit up like a small sun. A beam of pure energy lanced out and struck the targeted asteroid, which was roughly the size of a city. The rock vaporized instantly in a spectacular explosion of light and debris. The humans watched, in appreciative silence for a moment. Then Rodriguez started clapping. Not bad, he said. I'd give it a 6 out of 10, maybe 7 if they had added some color effects. The destruction pattern was efficient, Martinez noted professionally. Though I'm seeing a lot of waste heat and energy scatter. Their focusing system needs work. Dr. Kim was taking notes on her tablet. Fascinating. Pure energy projection, but the delivery system is remarkably inefficient. Look at how much power they had to charge up for that single shot. Admiral Zex-Thyra's triumphant expression faded as he listened to the human communications. They're analyzing our weapon? Sir, his tactical officer reported nervously. They're transmitting something to us. On screen, Captain Chen appeared. Again, this time holding what looked like a small computer tablet. That was pretty impressive, Admiral. Mind if I show you something? Before he could answer, she tapped her tablet and shared a video feed. The screen showed Earth's asteroid belt, where massive mining operations were in progress. Enormous machines were breaking apart asteroids with focused energy beams that looked remarkably similar to what the Imperial ship had just fired. This is our standard asteroid mining operation, Chen explained casually. We break up about 50 asteroids a day to keep up with demand for construction materials. The energy efficiency isn't great, but it gets the job done. The Admiral stared at the screen in growing horror as he watched dozens of human machines, casually destroying space rocks with weapons that matched his ship's annihilation cannon. Of course, this is just industrial equipment, Chen continued. Our actual military weapons are classified, but they're quite a bit more sophisticated. Better targeting, higher efficiency, much faster recharge times. Rodriguez leaned into the camera view. Hey, Admiral, your cannon has a really nice energy signature, but you might want to look into better particle focusing. We solved that problem about 50 years ago. I could send you some basic engineering papers if you want. Basic engineering papers? The Admiral's voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Kim joined the conversation. It's really quite impressive that you managed to build such a large weapon without solving the efficiency problems. Very retro, like building a spaceship out of wood. We don't build spaceships out of wood, Martinez pointed out. Exactly my point. Admiral Zex-Thyra turned to his chief engineer, his voice shaking with rage and confusion. Is this possible? Do they truly possess such technology? The engineer was studying the human video feed with growing excitement. Admiral, if these readings are accurate, their industrial mining equipment is more advanced than our primary weapon systems. The power-to-effect ratio alone is remarkable. But that's impossible. We are the masters of the galaxy. Our technology is supreme. Sir, the tactical officer interrupted. "We're receiving another transmission from the humans." Captain Chen's face appeared again, this time with what looked suspiciously like a smile she was trying to hide. "Admiral, I hope we didn't offend you with our feedback. We're always happy to share technical knowledge with new friends. In fact, would you like us to demonstrate our mining equipment?" "No!" the Admiral shouted quickly. "That is unnecessary." "Are you sure? We have a small asteroid processor on board for sample analysis. It's just a tiny one, nothing like what you saw in the video, but it might be interesting for you to see." The bridge crew of the Eternal Dominion looked at each other nervously. If their most powerful weapon was equivalent to human mining equipment, what were their actual weapons like? "Perhaps," the Admiral said carefully, "we could arrange a more formal meeting, a cultural exchange." "Oh, that would be wonderful," Dr. Kim's voice came from off-screen. "I have so many questions about your society. Like, why do you put spikes on everything? Is it religious, aesthetic, practical?" "The spikes represent the strength and power of the Empire," Admiral Zexthyra replied automatically. "But they don't actually do anything, right? They're just decorative?" They inspire fear in our enemies." Rodriguez laughed. "That's adorable. We used to do that too back in medieval times. Knights would put scary decorations on their armor to intimidate people. Then we invented guns and realized that looking scary wasn't as important as actually being dangerous." The Admiral felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. You no longer attempt to appear frightening?" "Why would we?" Captain Chen asked. "If someone is genuinely dangerous, they don't need to look the part. It's like the old human saying, 'Speak softly and carry a big stick.' What is this saying about sticks? It means that truly powerful people don't need to shout and threaten. They can be polite and calm because they know they can handle any situation that arises." Dr. Kim's voice added helpfully, "It's the difference between confidence and insecurity. Confident people don't need to prove anything to anyone." Admiral Zexthyra looked around his bridge at all the spikes, glowing lights, and intimidating decorations that covered every surface. For the first time in his career, he wondered if they made the Imperial Navy look strong, or if they made them look like they were trying too hard. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "should we continue with the demonstration?" The Admiral stared at the screen where the humans were cheerfully waiting for his response. They had just watched him fire his most powerful weapon and treated it like a mildly interesting science experiment. They had compared it to their mining equipment and offered to help him improve it. "No," he said finally. "Signal the fleet to maintain position, and perhaps we should invite them aboard for that cultural exchange." "Sir? I need to understand these humans better. Something is very wrong here, and I intend to find out what it is." On the human ship, Captain Chen turned to her crew. "Well, that went better than expected. Dr. Kim, prepare for a diplomatic mission. And someone remind me to have Rodriguez bring his engineering notes. I think these aliens might need some help with their technology." The shuttle bay of the Eternal Dominion was exactly what Captain Chen had expected. Massive, intimidating, and covered with completely unnecessary spikes. As the human delegation stepped off their small transport, they were greeted by an honor guard of Imperial soldiers in elaborate armor that looked like it weighed more than a small car. "Captain Chen," Admiral Zexthyra approached with what he probably thought was dignified authority. "Welcome aboard the flagship of the Imperial Navy." "Thanks for having us," Sarah replied cheerfully, looking around with obvious interest. "Wow, you really went all out with the evil Empire aesthetic. It's very committed." Dr. Kim was already taking pictures with her tablet. "This is fascinating from an architectural perspective. The psychological impact must be enormous on species that haven't encountered this design philosophy before." "The spikes serve a practical purpose," Admiral Zexthyra said defensively. "Which is?" Rodriguez asked, examining a decorative spike. That was purely ornamental. They represent our martial prowess. So they're just for show, Martinez concluded. That's actually kind of sweet, like putting racing stripes on a family car to make it look faster. The Admiral's glowing. Eyes flickered with irritation, but he maintained his composure. Perhaps you would like a tour of our vessel? Absolutely, Dr. Kim said enthusiastically. This is like visiting a museum of intimidation tactics. Do you have documentation on the design choices? I'd love to read about the cultural significance. As they walked through the corridors of the massive ship, the humans provided a running commentary that made the Imperial crew increasingly uncomfortable. Oh, look at these red lights, Jenkins pointed out. Very ominous, though from an ergonomic standpoint, red lighting makes it harder to read displays accurately. We used to do that in our old submarines until we realized it was causing more accidents than it was worth. The ceiling height is impressive, Dr. Kim added, but it's incredibly wasteful of internal space. You could fit 3 more decks in here with better architectural planning. Check out these computer interfaces, Rodriguez said, stopping at a control panel. Physical buttons for everything. That's very retro. We had systems like this about 200 years ago before we developed neural interfaces. Admiral Zexathyra stopped walking. Neural interfaces? Oh, yeah, Rodriguez explained casually. Direct mind-to-computer communication. Much faster than manual input, and you can't make typing errors. These button systems are kind of charming, though, like antique cars, a young Imperial technician whispered to his supervisor. Are our computers actually primitive? Silence, the supervisor hissed back, but he looked worried. The tour continued to the bridge, where the humans were suitably impressed by the size and grandeur of everything. However, their compliments were not quite what the Admiral had hoped. This is amazing, Sarah said, looking around the vast command center. It's like someone took a perfectly functional starship bridge and decorated it for a Halloween party. The attention to detail is incredible. I love how you've prioritized style over functionality, Dr. Kim added. It takes real commitment to make every surface uncomfortable to touch. Those spikes on the command chair must make long shifts really challenging. They remind the commander of the burden of leadership, Admiral Zexathyra said weakly. By causing physical pain? Martinez asked. That's actually kind of brilliant in a twisted way. Nothing says I'm in charge like sitting on a chair covered in spikes for 8 hours. The Imperial bridge crew was looking increasingly demoralized. Their pride and joy, the most advanced warship in the galaxy, was being casually mocked by aliens who treated it like an amusing curiosity. Perhaps, the Admiral said through gritted teeth, you would like to see our tactical systems? Sure, Sarah replied. Though I have to ask, do you really navigate using those manual star charts? We can see them from here. The navigation officer looked mortified. The charts provide proven reliability and backup systems in case of computer failure. But don't you have redundant computer systems? Rodriguez asked. And quantum backup storage? And emergency AI navigation protocols? Silence. You don't, do you? Dr. Kim said gently. You're using single-point failure systems for critical navigation. The Imperial crew exchanged worried glances. Their navigation systems, which they had always considered the height of technological achievement, were apparently obsolete by human standards. Let me guess, Martinez said, examining their weapons control station. Manual targeting for all weapon systems? No predictive firing algorithms? No automated threat assessment? Manual systems are more reliable, the weapons officer protested. They cannot be compromised by enemy interference. Unless the operator makes a mistake, Jenkins pointed out, or gets tired, or gets distracted, or dies. We solved those problems with redundant AI systems and neural backup operators. Admiral Zexathyra was beginning to feel sick. Perhaps we should discuss military tactics. The Empire has conquered thousands of worlds through superior strategy. Really? Dr. Kim perked up with interest. What's your standard approach? We appear in orbit with overwhelming force and demand surrender. When they refuse, we demonstrate our power by destroying military targets until they submit. The humans looked at each other in amazement. That's it? Sarah asked. That's your whole strategy? It has never failed. But what if they don't surrender? Rodriguez asked. What if they fight back effectively? What if they have better technology than you? That has never happened. Dr. Kim was taking rapid notes. So you've only encountered species that were significantly less advanced than you. No peer competitors. No technological equals. We are the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Were, Martinez corrected quietly. You were the most advanced until today. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. For the first time, Admiral Zexathyra truly understood what he was dealing with. These humans weren't just unimpressed by Imperial power. They were more advanced than the Empire in every meaningful way. Admiral, his communications officer called, out urgently. We're receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans they're broadcasting. Broadcasting what? Everything, sir. This entire encounter, other species are watching. Sarah smiled apologetically. Oh, sorry about that. We automatically record and transmit all first contact encounters for scientific analysis. It's standard protocol. I hope you don't mind. You're broadcasting this to your entire species and to anyone else who wants to watch. It's educational. Dr. Kim is going to write a paper about imperial psychology and social structure. This material is perfect for her research. Admiral Zexathyra felt the universe spinning around him. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species were watching the mighty Imperial Navy being casually dismissed by a small survey ship. They were watching him struggle to maintain authority while aliens treated his flagship like a tourist attraction. Perhaps, he said carefully, we could discuss this matter privately? Of course, Sarah replied. But just so you know, we're still recording for safety reasons. First contact protocols and all that. The Admiral closed his glowing eyes and wondered if this was what defeat felt like. Not the crushing blow of superior force, but the slow, humiliating realization that everything he had believed about imperial superiority was wrong. Dr. Kim, he said finally, what exactly will your paper conclude about imperial psychology? Dr. Kim looked up from her notes with genuine sympathy. That you're a classic example of a civilization that achieved dominance through technological advantage and then stopped innovating because you didn't have to. It's not uncommon. We went through something similar ourselves. You did? Oh, yes. We called them the Dark Ages. Very educational period. We learned a lot about humility. Admiral, Zexathyra suspected he was about to learn the same lesson. Grand Admiral Thexmore received the reports from Admiral Zexathyra with growing disbelief and rage. The humans had humiliated an Imperial fleet, broadcast the encounter across the galaxy, and then simply left to continue their mapping mission, as if nothing had happened. Worse, their casual dismissal of Imperial power was causing unrest on dozens of worlds as subject species began questioning the Empire's authority. This cannot stand, the Grand Admiral declared to his war council. If we allow these humans to mock the Empire without consequence, our entire civilization will collapse. We must make an example that will be remembered for 1,000 years. The War Council, composed of the Empire's most experienced military, leaders nodded in agreement. They had built their power on fear and intimidation. If species stopped fearing them, they would lose everything. What do we know about their homeworld? Asked Admiral Kexathera, the Empire's strategic planning chief. The planet they call Earth, replied the intelligence officer. Standard Class M. World, approximately 4 billion years old. Population estimated at 8 billion. They appear to have a single unified government for space operations, though their planetary politics are more complex. Defenses? Unknown. Our long-range scans detected standard orbital installations, but nothing that appeared significantly advanced. They seem to rely primarily on their space fleet for protection. Grand Admiral Thexmore smiled coldly. Then, we will crush their world and use it as an example. Assemble the 3rd Imperial Battle Fleet. I want 200 ships, including the new Devastator-class dreadnoughts. Sir, isn't that excessive for a single planet? After what happened with Zexthera's fleet, I'm taking no chances. We will overwhelm them with such force that resistance will be impossible. 3 weeks later, the massive Imperial Armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The sight was genuinely impressive. 200 of the Empire's most advanced warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls bristling with weapons and glowing with intimidating energy displays. "This is Grand Admiral Thexmore of the Galactic Empire," he broadcast toward Earth. "You have insulted the dignity of the Empire and spread lies about Imperial capabilities. Your world is condemned. Surrender immediately, and we will limit the destruction to your military installations. Resist, and we will scorch your planet bare." The response came from a pleasant-sounding woman with a slight accent. "Hello, Admiral. This is Admiral Patricia, Santos of Earth Defense Command. We've been expecting you. Before we get started, would you mind holding position for about 10 minutes? We're still getting the popcorn ready." "Popcorn?" Grand Admiral Thexmore looked confused. "For the show. Our entire planet is about to watch this on live broadcast. It's been promoted as the biggest entertainment event of the year. Really, you couldn't have timed it better." The Grand Admiral felt a familiar chill. These humans were treating an Imperial invasion fleet like some sort of amusement. "You have 10 minutes to surrender unconditionally. After that, we begin bombardment." "Oh, we don't really do surrender," Admiral Santos replied cheerfully. "It's not really our thing, but 10 minutes is perfect. That gives us time to finish the pre-show commentary." On the Imperial flagship, the tactical officer was studying his displays with growing concern. "Sir, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the inner system." "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures consistent with, well, with our own ships. But I don't see anything on visual." Grand Admiral Thexmore frowned. "Explain." "Sir, it's as if there are ships there, but they're not visible to our sensors. Stealth technology, perhaps?" The communication channel crackled to life again. "Admiral Thexmore, this is Admiral Santos again. We've finished our preparations. Are you ready to begin?" "Begin what?" "The demonstration. Oh, and just so you know, we've invited some observers. I hope you don't mind an audience." Suddenly, space around the Imperial fleet came alive with light. Hundreds of human ships materialized out of nowhere, their stealth fields dropping simultaneously. They had been hidden throughout the system, waiting. But these weren't the small survey ships the Empire expected. These were warships that looked like they had been designed by engineers who understood that function was more important than appearance. Clean lines, efficient designs, and weapon systems that hummed with barely contained energy. "How?" Grand Admiral Thexmore whispered. "Cloaking technology," Admiral Santos explained helpfully. "We've been using it for about 50 years. Very handy. For avoiding unnecessary conflicts, we prefer to be left alone." The Imperial sensors were going crazy as they tried to process what they were seeing. The human fleet was smaller in total numbers, but each ship was reading as significantly more advanced than anything in the Imperial Navy. "This is impossible," the Grand Admiral said. "No species has technology superior to the Empire." "Well, that's awkward," came another voice from the human fleet. "This is Captain Rodriguez, by the way. I was the engineer who offered to help you. Upgrade your weapon systems. The offer still stands, though I understand if you're feeling a bit embarrassed right now." "Sir," the Imperial tactical officer reported urgently, The human ships are moving into attack formation. Their targeting systems are locking onto our vessels. Return fire. All ships, open fire. The Imperial fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of energy weapons and missiles. Space lit up with the fury of 200 warships firing at once. It was the kind of display that had broken the will of countless species across the galaxy. The human response was educational. Every single Imperial shot was intercepted by defensive systems the Empire didn't even know existed. Point defense lasers, energy shields, and interception missiles created a web of protection around the human ships that made them essentially untouchable. Interesting, Admiral Santos commented, as if she was watching a training exercise. Your accuracy is actually quite good. The targeting systems need work, but the basic gunnery is solid. Then the humans fired back. It wasn't a dramatic barrage like the Imperial attack. Instead, each human ship fired a single, precisely targeted shot. The results were devastating. Imperial ships began exploding in perfect sequence as the human weapons tore through their defenses like paper. "How are they penetrating our shields?" someone screamed over the Imperial communications. "They're not penetrating them," replied a human voice that was clearly monitoring their transmissions. "We're bypassing them entirely. Your shield technology is about a century out of date." Within 5 minutes, half the Imperial fleet was either destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels that moved with impossible grace and fired with perfect accuracy. "This is Captain Martinez of the EDS Retribution," came another calm human voice. "Imperial fleet, you are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resist will result in the complete destruction of your remaining ships." Grand Admiral Thexmore stared at his tactical displays in numb shock. The mightiest fleet the Empire had ever assembled was being systematically dismantled by human forces that treated the battle like a training exercise. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a personal message from Admiral Santos." On screen, a middle-aged human woman appeared, sitting calmly in what looked like a perfectly normal starship bridge. No spikes, no intimidating lighting, no dramatic decorations, just professional efficiency. "Admiral Thexmore," she said gently, "this doesn't have to continue. Your people are dying for no good reason. Surrender now, and we'll provide medical aid to your wounded and safe passage home for the survivors." "The Empire does not surrender," the Grand Admiral said through gritted teeth. "That's your choice," Admiral Santos replied. "But I should mention that we've been in contact with your subject worlds. Quite a few of them are very interested in what's happening here. Some of them are asking about their own independence." The Grand Admiral felt his world crumbling around him. Not only was the Imperial fleet being destroyed, but the very foundation of Imperial power was being undermined. If their subject species saw this defeat, the Empire itself might collapse. "What do you want?" he asked, finally. "Honestly, we just want to be left alone. We don't want your territory. We don't want to rule your people. And we don't want to destroy your civilization. We just want you to stop threatening people." "And if we refuse?" Admiral Santos smiled sadly. "Then we'll have to keep teaching you lessons until you learn. But I really hope it doesn't come to that. War is wasteful, and we have better things to do with our time." Grand Admiral Thexamore looked at his remaining ships, then at the human fleet that surrounded them. For the first time in Imperial history, they had encountered a force they couldn't defeat, couldn't intimidate, and couldn't understand. I surrender," he said quietly. The words that had never been spoken by an Imperial commander echoed across the galaxy, broadcast live to billions of beings who had never imagined the Empire could be defeated. The aftermath of the Battle of Saul, as historians would later call it, unfolded exactly as Admiral Santos had predicted. Within hours of Grand Admiral Thexmore's surrender being broadcast across the galaxy, rebellion broke out on 17 Imperial worlds. Within days, that number had grown to over 100. The humans, true to their word, provided medical aid to the wounded Imperial forces and safe passage home to the survivors. They also did something unprecedented in galactic history. They live-streamed the entire humanitarian operation, complete with commentary from Dr. Kim about the psychological and sociological implications of what they were witnessing. "What we're seeing here," Dr. Kim explained to her massive galactic audience, "is the collapse of a power structure based entirely on intimidation. The Empire never actually had to govern effectively because they ruled through fear. Once that fear was removed, the whole system became unsustainable." Captain Chen, now something of a galactic celebrity, was conducting interviews from the bridge of the Wanderlust. "The thing people need to understand," she told a reporter from the Centauri News Network, "is that this was never about humans versus the Empire. This was about bullies versus everyone else. We just happened to be the ones who weren't afraid of them." The Empire's response to the crisis was typically imperial: more threats and more violence. They dispatched fleets to suppress the rebellions, proclaimed martial law across their territory, and demanded immediate submission from all their subject species. It didn't work. For the first time in galactic history, the Empire's subject species had seen proof that the Imperial Navy could be defeated. More importantly, they had seen humans offering to help anyone who wanted to be free. The human response was characteristically practical. They established what they called the Freedom Broadcasting Network, which provided real-time communication support to rebellion movements across Imperial space. They also offered technical assistance, medical aid, and something the galaxy had never seen before: aid with no strings attached. "We're not trying to build our own empire," Admiral Santos explained in a broadcast that reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. "We don't want to rule anyone. We just want to help people rule themselves." The Empire's military leaders were baffled by this approach. They understood conquest, they understood exploitation, but they couldn't comprehend the concept of helping others without expecting something in return. "What do they gain?" Admiral Zexathyra asked during his debriefing on the Imperial homeworld. "What is their true motive?" The Imperial intelligence analysts had been studying human behavior for months and still couldn't find a hidden agenda. "They appear to be genuinely altruistic, sir. Their internal communications, which we've intercepted, confirm that they actually mean what they say." "That's impossible. No species achieves galactic-level technology without aggressive expansion and resource acquisition." "The humans did, sir. They appear to have developed their technology through cooperation rather than conquest. Meanwhile, the humans were busy doing what they did best: solving problems. They established refugee camps for species fleeing Imperial retaliation, shared agricultural technology with planets facing food shortages, and provided defense assistance to worlds that requested protection. But their most devastating weapon against the Empire wasn't military technology, it was their entertainment industry. Human comedians across the galaxy were having a field day with Imperial culture. Stand-up routines about evil empires with decorating problems became hugely popular. Satirical videos comparing Imperial technology to museum pieces went viral across dozens of species. Most damaging of all, humans started making parody recruitment. Videos for the Imperial Navy that featured actors in ridiculous spike-covered costumes failing to operate basic technology. Admiral Zexathyra found himself the unwilling star of several comedy shows after his encounter with Captain Chen went viral. His dramatic threats and confused responses to human technology were remixed into dance music and turned into memes that spread across the galaxy. "They're making jokes about us," he reported to the Imperial Council with obvious distress. "Billions of beings are laughing at the Imperial Navy." "It's worse than that," the Imperial propaganda minister added. "Our own citizens are sharing these videos. Imperial loyalty is collapsing because people think we're ridiculous." The final blow came when the humans announced their solution to the galactic political crisis, a massive diplomatic conference on a neutral world, where every species could send representatives to discuss forming a new galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. The Empire was invited to participate, but only as one voice among many, with no special authority or privileges. "This is unacceptable," declared Supreme Emperor Vex Thul from his throne room on the imperial capital. "The Empire has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not be reduced to equals with our former subjects." His words were broadcast live to the galaxy, thanks to human transmission technology that the Empire couldn't block or interfere with. The response was immediate and devastating. Laughter. Species across the galaxy were literally laughing at the Emperor's declarations. Human social media platforms were filled with mocking commentary about failed empires throwing tantrums. Even some Imperial citizens were quietly sharing the jokes. 6 months after first contact, Admiral Zex Thyra found himself in an escape pod, drifting through space after his latest ship had been disabled by a rebellion fleet equipped with human-supplied weapons. As he waited for rescue, he listened to the galactic news broadcasts on his emergency radio. The Galactic Confederation officially voted today to offer humanitarian aid to Imperial refugees, the news anchor reported. Human representatives emphasized that this aid is available to all beings regardless of their political affiliations or past actions. In related news, the former imperial world of Kepler-7 has successfully transitioned to democratic self-governance with assistance from human political advisors. Their new constitution guarantees rights for all citizens and prohibits the use of spikes in government architecture. And in our entertainment segment, the comedy hit Humans Explain Things to Confused Aliens has been renewed for a second season. Tonight's episode features Earth comedian Jenny Martinez teaching former Imperial Admiral Zex Thyra how to use a computer mouse. Admiral Zex Thyra turned off the radio and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the humans were still exploring space, still helping people, and still treating the collapse of the mightiest empire in galactic history like an interesting but not particularly surprising development. A rescue ship appeared on his sensors, not Imperial, but a humanitarian vessel from the Galactic Confederation. As it approached, he could see it was staffed by a mixed crew of species that had once been Imperial subjects. "Unknown escape pod. This is the rescue vessel Hope's Light," came a voice over the radio. "We're here to help. Do you need medical assistance? This is Admiral Zex Thyra of the Imperial Navy." There was a pause, then a different voice came on the radio. It sounded amused. "Oh, you're the guy from the videos. Don't worry, Admiral, we're still going to rescue you. The humans taught us that everyone deserves help, even people who used to be our oppressors." As the rescue ship pulled him aboard, Admiral Zex Thyra realized that this was perhaps the humans' greatest victory. They hadn't just defeated the Empire, they had taught the galaxy that there was a better way to live. The last emperor of the Galactic Empire officially abdicated 3 months later. His final statement, broadcast across the galaxy, was simple. "We surrender. Please teach us how to be better." Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen of the newly formed Galactic Exploration Service, responded personally to the Emperor's message. "Surrender isn't necessary. Just come to the table and let's figure this out together, and maybe lose the spikes. They really don't help with anything." The galaxy, for the first time in its recorded history, was at peace, and it had been achieved not through conquest or domination, but through the simple human philosophy of treating bullies like the confused, insecure beings they really were. Dr. Kim's book about the collapse of the Empire became a bestseller across 47 species. Its title was perfectly human: How to Defeat a Galactic Empire by Laughing at Them, a Study in Applied Psychology. The subtitle was even better: Why Being Terrifying is Less Important Than Being Competent. The massive crystal towers of Nexus Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the tallest tower, Admiral Kethvar stood before a wall of glowing screens. His 6 arms moved gracefully as he reviewed reports from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian hegemony controlled 847 star systems, and Kethvar was the military mind behind their power. Today was different. Today brought something new. "Admiral," his aide whispered, approaching with careful steps. "We have received a transmission from an unknown world." Kethavar's large black eyes turned toward the smaller Zephyrian. "Unknown? That is impossible. We have mapped every world in this sector. The signal comes from a small yellow star, 3rd planet. They call themselves humans." The word sounded strange in the alien language. Kethvar clicked his mandibles together, a sign of curiosity. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life. A human woman appeared, standing in what looked like a primitive facility. Her skin was dark, her hair pulled back, and she wore simple clothing compared to Zephyrian robes. "Greetings," the human said. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, speaking for the people of Earth. We have detected your empire's expansion toward our star system. We come in peace and hope to establish trade relations with your civilization." Kethvar's mandibles clicked faster. The other Zephyrians in the command center gathered around the screen. Dr. Vasquez continued. "We understand you are a powerful, spacefaring civilization. We are new to space travel ourselves, but we have much to offer. Our world is rich in resources, and our people are eager to learn and share knowledge." The transmission showed images of Earth, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, cities with tall buildings that looked primitive compared to Zephyrian. Crystal architecture. "However," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice becoming serious, "we must warn you against any aggressive expansion toward our system. While we prefer peace, we will defend our world if necessary." The screen went dark. Silence filled the command center for several moments. Then Kethvar began to laugh. His laughter was a high, musical sound that echoed through the crystal halls. Soon, other Zephyrians joined him. "Warn us?" Kethvar gasped between laughs. "Did this primitive creature just warn the Zephyrian hegemony?" He activated his personal communicator. "Send this transmission to all fleet commanders. Let them see what passes for diplomacy among the lesser species." Within hours, the human transmission was playing across hegemony space. In war rooms and officer clubs, Zephyrians watched with amusement as the tiny human dared to threaten their empire. Kethvar called his war council together. The greatest military minds of the hegemony gathered in the crystal chamber, where they had planned the conquest of hundreds of worlds. "What do we know about these humans?" Kethvar asked. General Thexala activated a holographic display. "Our long-range sensors show a single planet with approximately 8 billion inhabitants. Their technology is extremely primitive." The display showed human weapons, guns that fired metal projectiles, explosive devices powered by chemical reactions, aircraft that still used fossil fuels. "They have recently developed nuclear weapons," Thexala continued, "but their most powerful bombs are only equivalent to our personal sidearms." More images appeared. Human spacecraft that looked like metal tubes with fire coming out the back. Clumsy, slow vessels that barely escaped their own gravity well. Their fastest ships would take them hundreds of years to reach the nearest star, another general reported. They have only just begun to explore their own solar system. Kethvar studied the data. "What about their military?" "Laughable," Thexala said. "They still fight wars with projectile weapons and chemical explosives. They have no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no reality manipulation technology. Their largest warships are smaller than our shuttlecraft." The room filled with the musical laughter of Zephyrians. These humans were like children playing with sticks, while giants wielded the power of stars. "Admiral," a younger officer spoke up, "perhaps we should simply ignore them. They pose no threat to the hegemony." Kethvar's laughter stopped. His black eyes glittered with a dangerous light. Ignore them? No. These humans have given us something much more valuable than resources. He stood and walked to the center of the room. They have given us an opportunity. We have just conquered the Vorthak Empire. Our newest subjects need to see what happens to those who oppose us. The War Council understood immediately. The hegemony had recently added several species to their empire. Some were restless, wondering if they could resist Zephyrian rule. A public demonstration of power would remind everyone why resistance was futile. Earth will be our example, Kethvar continued. We will show the galaxy what happens when primitives dare to threaten the hegemony. General Thexala nodded. How large a fleet do you recommend? Kethvar considered this. Too small a force might struggle against the humans' crude weapons. Too large would suggest the hegemony took the threat seriously. 40 ships, he decided. A patrol fleet, enough to handle any resistance but small enough to show our contempt. Who will command? Sub-Admiral Veltar. This will be good experience for him. Fighting primitives should teach him the basics of conquest. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Sub-Admiral Veltar was young and ambitious. He would arrive at Earth expecting easy victory. The humans would resist with their primitive weapons. Veltar would crush them effortlessly. The entire galaxy would watch and learn. Kethvar activated the communication system. Across hegemony space, the message went out. In 3 months, a Zephyrian fleet would demonstrate their power by conquering the primitive world that had dared to threaten them. The reaction was immediate. Betting pools opened on how long Earth would last. Some predicted hours, others gave. The humans, a full day. No one expected them to survive a week. On distant worlds, recently conquered species watched the preparations with interest. The Vorthaks, who had fought the hegemony with honor codes and traditional tactics, whispered among themselves. Perhaps they would learn something from watching how the Zephyrians dealt with desperate primitives. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the same facility where she had recorded her message. Around her, human scientists and military officers worked frantically. Deep space sensors had detected the Zephyrian fleet's departure from Nexus Prime. 3 months, Captain Marcus Chen said, studying the sensor data. They're giving us 3 months to prepare. Or to surrender, Dr. Vasquez replied quietly. Chen looked at her with steel in his eyes. Are we considering surrender? Dr. Vasquez thought about her children, about all the children on Earth. She thought about the human spirit that had carried them from caves to the stars. She thought about every generation that had faced impossible odds and somehow found a way. To survive! No, she said. We fight! Across Earth, the message went out. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization would be a war for survival. The aliens expected easy victory over primitive humans. They had no idea what humans could do when their backs were against the wall. They had never seen a species that refused to accept defeat. They had never encountered the terrible creativity of humans who had nothing left to lose. The Zephyrian hegemony was about to learn why Earth's threats should never be dismissed. Sub-Admiral Veltar felt excitement flowing through his veins as his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Around him, 40 Zephyrian warships materialized in perfect formation. Each vessel was the size of a human city, armed with weapons that could crack continents. Beautiful, Veltar whispered, looking at the primitive star system spread before them. A yellow sun burned at the center, with small planets orbiting like toys. The third planet, Earth, showed blue and green through his sensors. Sub-Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We are receiving multiple transmissions from the human world." "Put them through," Veltar ordered. He expected pleas for mercy, offers of surrender, perhaps even worship of their superior technology. Instead, he heard something unexpected. Unknown alien vessels. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are entering human space without permission. Turn around now or face the consequences. Veltar's mandibles clicked with amusement. Around the bridge, other Zephyrians laughed softly. The humans still thought they could threaten the hegemony. Reply to them, Veltar commanded. Tell them, we have come to accept their surrender. They have 1 hour to submit, or we will take their world by force. The response came immediately. This is Captain Chen. We do not surrender. We do not submit. If you want our world, you will have to take it. More laughter filled the bridge. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. Veltar suspected the latter. Begin the attack, he ordered. Target their orbital installations first. Show them our power. The Zephyrian fleet moved forward, their energy weapons charged with a sound like distant thunder. Veltar expected the humans to flee or beg for mercy when they saw the true might of the hegemony. Instead, the humans attacked. It was not an attack like anything Veltar had ever seen. Human ships came from everywhere at once. Some rose from the planet's surface. Others appeared from behind moons and asteroids. More came from the outer planets where they had been hiding. But these were not the primitive vessels shown in the intelligence reports. These ships looked wrong, like they had been built by madmen. They were covered in extra armor welded on without care for appearance. Weapons stuck out at strange angles. Some ships looked like they had been strapped to. Massive bombs! What are those? Veltar demanded. His tactical officer studied the sensors. Sub-Admiral, they appear to be civilian vessels that have been converted for combat. Cargo ships, passenger liners, even mining equipment. Are they trying to ram us? The answer came seconds later. A human ship that looked like it had once carried freight slammed into the side of a Zephyrian cruiser, but instead of simply crashing, it exploded with the force of a small star. The Zephyrian ship cracked in half, atmosphere and crew spilling into space. Impossible, Veltar breathed. They destroyed the glorious victory with a cargo ship? More human vessels rushed toward his fleet. These were not attempts to ram. These were guided missiles the size of buildings, piloted by humans who showed no fear of death. Veltar watched in horror as ship after ship in his fleet took damage from these suicide attacks. The humans seemed to have no regard for their own lives. They threw themselves at Zephyrian vessels like they were trying to stop an avalanche with their bare hands. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from one of the human ships. Put it through. Captain Marcus Chen's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, Veltar could see that the human ship was badly damaged. Smoke filled the bridge, and sparks flew from broken equipment. You wanted to see what humans do when cornered? Chen said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. Watch, carefully. The transmission cut off. Veltar's sensors showed Chen's ship accelerating directly toward the Zephyrian flagship, but this was not a simple ramming attack. Sub-Admiral, the tactical officer shouted, that ship's reactor is overloading. It's going to explode! Evasive action! Veltar commanded. Too late! Chen's ship struck the flagship's shields and detonated. The explosion was so bright it temporarily blinded the sensors. When they cleared, 2 Zephyrian dreadnoughts were gone, simply erased from existence. Around the battlefield, human tactics made no sense to Zephyrian military doctrine. Humans hid among their own civilian population, launching attacks from hospitals and schools. When Zephyrian forces tried to target military installations, they found humans had built weapons inside refugee centers and orphanages. They're using their own people as shields, the tactical officer reported, disgust clear in his voice. But it was not cowardice. The humans were not hiding behind civilians. The civilians were fighting too. Veltar watched in amazement as human cargo haulers, fitted with mining lasers, attacked his patrol ships. Old humans, young humans, even human children helped reload weapons and carry ammunition. This was not warfare as the Zephyrians understood it. This was something primal and desperate. The humans fought like cornered animals, but with the intelligence to make their desperation deadly. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than predicted," the tactical officer reported. "Current casualties are at 40%. 40%? Against primitives? Veltar could not believe it. The humans had technology, centuries behind Zephyrian science. Their weapons should barely scratch hegemony shields. But somehow, the humans had found ways to make their primitive weapons effective. They concentrated fire on single targets, overwhelming shields through sheer numbers. They used their own ships as weapons, turning every vessel into a potential bomb. They fought with tactics that no honorable species would consider. "Sub-Admiral," another officer called out, "the humans are using some kind of new weapon." On the screen, Veltar saw human ships firing projectiles that looked like simple metal rods. But when these rods struck Zephyrian vessels, they penetrated deep into the hull before exploding from inside. "How are they bypassing our shields?" "The projectiles are too primitive, sir. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and advanced missiles. These simple metal rods pass right through." Veltar felt a chill run through his body. The humans had found a weakness in Zephyrian technology by being too primitive for their defenses to recognize as threats. The battle raged for 6 more hours. With each passing minute, Veltar lost more ships to human tactics that defied all military logic. The humans refused to retreat even when facing certain death. They turned every defeat into a victory by making it cost the Zephyrians more than they could afford. When the surviving human forces finally retreated, Veltar counted his losses. 24 ships destroyed or too damaged to fight. Nearly 60% casualties against an enemy that should have been helpless. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender terms from Earth." Veltar's hopes rose. Perhaps the humans had finally seen reason. Instead, he heard Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice. "To the alien fleet, you have won this battle, but you have lost something more important. You have shown us who you really are. You have taught us that mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. Remember this day because we will." The transmission ended. Veltar stared at the blue and green planet below. His fleet had won, but it felt like defeat. They had conquered Earth, but at a cost that made victory meaningless. Worse, he had the feeling that this was not the end. Dr. Vasquez's words echoed in his mind. The humans had learned something from this battle. They had seen Zephyrian technology, up close, studied their tactics, found their weaknesses. Veltar began writing his report to Admiral Kethvar. How could he explain that 40 ships had barely managed to defeat a primitive world? How could he describe the terror of facing an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare? He settled on the simple truth. The humans were not like other species. They fought without honor, without logic, without regard for their own survival. They were savage and unpredictable and absolutely terrifying in their determination. But even as he wrote these words, Veltar knew that Admiral Kethvar would not believe them. The High Command would see only victory and dismiss the warnings about human savagery as excuses for heavy losses. They would learn the truth soon enough. The humans were still out there, scattered among the stars, carrying their knowledge of Zephyrian weaknesses into the darkness, and they would be back. 5 years had passed since the fall of Earth. In the crystal towers of Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethvar reviewed reports of successful mining operations on the conquered human world. The hegemony had stripped away Earth's forests and mountains, extracting valuable minerals while the surviving humans labored in work camps. The Earth problem, as Kethvar called it, appeared to be solved. He was wrong. Hidden in an asteroid field far from any Zephyrian patrol route, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Station Prometheus. The facility had been carved from the inside of a massive asteroid, its chambers filled with recovered human survivors and salvaged alien technology. Around her, the best minds that had escaped Earth's fall worked day and night. Engineers studied captured Zephyrian weapons. Scientists analyzed alien biology from blood samples taken during the battle. Tacticians planned operations that would have been impossible 5 years ago. "Status report?" Vasquez asked Captain Sarah Rodriguez, who had taken command of military operations after Marcus Chen's death. 73 hidden facilities now operational, Rodriguez replied. "We have approximately 2 million survivors scattered across 40 different locations. Most are mining ships or research stations that the aliens ignore." Vasquez nodded. The Zephyrians had made a crucial mistake. They thought like conquerors, focusing on major population centers and obvious military targets. They had not considered that humans might scatter like seeds in the wind, setting up new colonies in places too small or remote to matter. "What about equipment?" "Better than expected. We've reverse-engineered their shield technology, though our version is much cruder. We can't match their energy weapons, but we've found ways to improve our kinetic weapons using their power sources." "Doctor." James Park, the chief scientist, looked up from his workstation. "Elena, you need to see this." Vasquez walked over to where Park was studying a holographic display of Zephyrian anatomy. The image showed the alien's internal structure in detail, with various organs highlighted in different colors. "I've been analyzing the biological samples we collected," Park explained. "The Zephyrians have some interesting weaknesses. Their respiratory system is extremely efficient but also very sensitive. A chemical that would barely affect humans could be lethal to them. Poison gas? More sophisticated than that. I'm working on a targeted pathogen, something that would affect only Zephyrian biology while leaving other species unharmed." Vasquez studied the data. "How long?" "Give me 6 more months, and I can have a working prototype." This was the kind of innovation that had kept humanity alive for 5 years. Unable to match Zephyrian technology directly, humans had found ways to work around it. They built weapons from salvaged parts. They developed tactics based on their enemy's psychology rather than their own strength. Most importantly, they had learned to think like humans instead of like the civilized species the Zephyrians were used to fighting. "Commander Rodriguez," Vasquez called out, "show me our current operations." Rodriguez activated the main display. A map of local space appeared, showing Zephyrian positions in red and suspected human activities in blue. "We have 3 types of operations running," Rodriguez explained. "First, pure harassment. Small raids on mining facilities and transport ships. Nothing that does serious damage, but enough to make them nervous." Blue dots appeared on the map, showing hit-and-run attacks across dozens of systems. To the Zephyrians, these looked like the desperate actions of scattered refugees. They had no idea these attacks were coordinated from hidden command centers. Second, intelligence gathering. "We've planted surveillance devices on major hegemony facilities. We know their patrol schedules, supply routes, and communication protocols." More blue dots appeared, this time around major Zephyrian installations. Vasquez was impressed by how thoroughly humans had infiltrated their enemy's operations. Third, preparation for major operations. "We're positioning assets near critical targets and waiting for the right moment to strike." The final set of blue dots showed human forces positioned near important Zephyrian facilities. Not enough to threaten them directly, but enough to cause serious damage if they all attacked at once. "How many Zephyrians know we still exist as an organized force?" Vasquez asked. "Very few. Most think we're just scattered survivors causing random trouble. Admiral Kethavar's reports classify us as minor insurgent activity that will fade away as the survivors die off." Vasquez smiled grimly. Let them think that. Human insurgent activity was about to become something much more dangerous. Captain Rodriguez, I want you to implement Operation Ghost Ship. Rodriguez grinned. About time. Ghost Ship was humanity's most ambitious project. Using captured Zephyrian technology, human engineers had built ships that appeared on alien sensors as space debris. Old asteroids, dead satellites, pieces of destroyed vessels. But hidden inside each piece of junk was a fully functional warship. The beauty of the design was psychological. Zephyrians were a proud species who believed in the superiority of their technology. The idea that primitive human ships could hide from their advanced sensors was literally unthinkable. Start with the Kepler mining station, Vasquez ordered. Full documentation. I want every moment recorded and broadcast across hegemony space. The Kepler mining station was a typical Zephyrian operation. Massive extractors stripped minerals from a dead planet, while a small garrison protected the facility. The Zephyrians had grown complacent after 5 years without serious human resistance. They had no idea that 3 asteroids drifting near their station were actually human warships. The attack began at what humans called 0 hour. The asteroids suddenly came alive, shedding their outer shells to reveal sleek predator ships underneath. By the time Zephyrian sensors detected the threat, human weapons were already firing. But this was not the desperate ramming attacks of 5 years ago. These humans had learned to use Zephyrian technology against itself. Their kinetic weapons fired rounds that looked like debris to alien sensors. Their shields used modified Zephyrian generators that confused enemy targeting systems. The mining station's garrison never had a chance to call for help. The humans jammed their communications, isolated their weapons, and systematically destroyed every defensive system. Within an hour, the facility was burning wreckage, but the most terrifying part for the Zephyrians was what the humans did next. Instead of simply destroying the station, they downloaded its entire computer system, personnel records, operational procedures, communication codes, supply schedules, everything. Then they vanished, leaving behind only a message painted on the station's hull in letters large enough to be seen from space. Earth remembers. Similar attacks began happening across hegemony space. Mining stations exploded. Transport ships vanished without trace. Garrison commanders found their facilities sabotaged in ways that should have been impossible. The Zephyrians tried to respond, but they were fighting shadows. Human ships appeared on sensors as space junk until the moment they attacked. Human infiltrators used stolen Zephyrian technology to bypass security systems. Human tactics made no sense according to civilized military doctrine. Worse, the humans seemed to know everything about Zephyrian operations. They attacked at exactly the right times, in exactly the right places, using exactly the right methods to cause maximum damage. What the Zephyrians did not know was that 5 years of careful intelligence gathering had given humans complete maps of hegemony operations. They knew patrol schedules, supply routes, communication protocols, and security procedures. Dr. Park's biological weapons were ready ahead of schedule. Human engineers had perfected their ghost ship technology. Captain Rodriguez's tactical teams had identified hundreds of high-value targets. Most importantly, Dr. Vasquez had developed something the Zephyrians could not understand or counter, a human strategy based on terror rather than conquest. The hegemony was used to fighting other civilized species, honorable enemies who followed predictable patterns and fought according to established rules. They had never faced an enemy that refused to play by those rules. Humans did not want to conquer the Zephyrian hegemony. They wanted to destroy it. Not just its ships and planets, but its confidence, its superiority, its very sense of safety. Every successful human attack carried the same message. Nowhere was safe, no one could be trusted, and the Zephyrians' technology was not as advanced as they believed. In his crystal tower on Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethvar was beginning to receive reports that made no sense. Facilities destroyed by invisible attackers, ships that vanished without sending distress calls, equipment that failed at exactly the wrong moments. His subordinates offered theories. maintenance problems, accidents, random equipment failures, technical issues that came with managing a large empire. Kethvar dismissed their concerns. The hegemony was strong. Their technology was superior. The idea that scattered human survivors could threaten 847 star systems was absurd. But deep inside his mind, a small voice whispered warnings he refused to hear. The voice reminded him of Dr. Vasquez's final transmission. Remember this day, because we will. The humans had remembered. They had learned. And they were coming. The War Council chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy. Admiral Kethvar studied the holographic display showing hegemony space, but the map looked wrong. Red warning indicators marked dozens of locations where Zephyrian facilities had suffered technical failures in the past month. "Explain this to me again," Kethvar demanded, pointing at a cluster of red dots near the Rigel sector. General Thexala cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, the mining station at Kepler 442 suffered a complete reactor failure. All personnel lost. The transport ship Stellar Pride experienced navigation system malfunctions and crashed into an asteroid. The garrison at Vega 7 reported equipment failures before communications were lost." Kethvar's mandibles clicked with irritation. "And you believe these are accidents?" "What else could they be, sir? Our intelligence shows the human survivors are scattered refugees barely managing to survive. They lack the technology or organization to threaten hegemony facilities." But Kethvar had been receiving disturbing reports from frontline commanders. Stories of ships that appeared on sensors as space debris until they opened fire. Attacks that showed impossible knowledge of Zephyrian security protocols. Equipment failures that happened at exactly the worst possible moments. "Show me the Kepler 442. Incident again," he ordered. The holographic display changed to show the wreckage of the mining station. The facility had been completely destroyed. But what caught Kethvar's attention was the message painted on the largest remaining piece of hull. "Earth remembers." "Sir," General Thexala said carefully, "this could be the work of other insurgent groups trying to blame humans for their activities." Kethvar was about to respond when his communications officer rushed into the chamber. "Admiral, urgent transmission from Sub-Admiral Veltar at the Centauri facility." The main screen activated, showing Veltar's face. The young officer looked terrified, his usual confidence replaced by panic. "Admiral Kethvar, we are under attack by unknown forces. Our sensors show nothing but space debris, but we're taking heavy fire from multiple directions. Behind Veltar, explosions lit up the bridge. Alarms wailed as Zephyrian crew members shouted, in their musical language, 'Sir, the attackers are using our own communication codes. They're jamming our transmissions and—'" The transmission cut to static. Kethvar stared at the empty screen. Around him, the War Council stood in shocked silence. "Get me a connection to Centauri," Kethvar ordered. "Sir, all communications with the facility have been lost." Far from Nexus Prime, Dr. Vasquez watched the destruction of the Centauri facility. From the bridge of her flagship, Resurrection. The ship had been built from the hull of a captured Zephyrian dreadnought, modified with human technology and crewed by survivors who had nothing left to lose. "Facility secured," Captain Rodriguez reported. "All defensive systems neutralized. Garrison eliminated. Casualties? Minimal. The ghost ship tactics worked perfectly. They never saw us coming." Vasquez nodded. This was the 15th major Zephyrian facility destroyed in the past month. Each attack followed the same pattern. Approach disguised as space debris. Jam communications, strike fast and hard, download all computer systems, leave a message, disappear. But this attack was different. This was the beginning of Operation Prometheus. "Dr. Park, are your teams in position?" The scientist's face appeared on a secondary screen. He was aboard a stealth ship positioned near the Zephyrian homeworld itself. "Ready for deployment, Elena. The atmospheric processors on Nexus Prime are completely unprotected. They never considered that someone might attack the air itself." Park's biological weapon was a masterpiece of human creativity. It would not kill Zephyrians, but it would turn their homeworld sky-red for months. Every time they looked up, they would see the color of human anger. "Captain Morris, what's the status of the network intrusion?" A third screen showed Captain David Morris, formerly a computer programmer, now humanity's most effective cyber warrior. "We're inside their quantum communication network. It took us 3 years to crack their encryption, but we finally found the back door. When you give the word, we can inject our virus into every major Zephyrian facility simultaneously." Vasquez felt a grim satisfaction. The Zephyrians had built their empire on the belief that their technology was superior to all others. They were about to learn what happened when that technology was turned against them. "All teams, begin Operation Prometheus." Across hegemony space, human forces that had been hiding for 5 years suddenly revealed themselves. But this was not a conventional military attack. This was something far more terrifying. A campaign designed to destroy Zephyrian confidence in their own superiority. On Nexus Prime, Dr. Park's team released their biological weapon into the atmosphere processing systems. Within hours, the planet's sky began to change color. Blue faded to purple, then to deep red. The effect would last for months, a constant reminder that human science could reach even the hegemony's heart. On 17 major worlds, Captain Morris's computer virus infected Zephyrian networks simultaneously. But this was not random destruction. The virus was designed to make Zephyrian technology unreliable in specific ways. Defensive shields would fail at the worst possible moments. Communication systems would broadcast human propaganda instead of military orders. Life support systems would create minor but terrifying malfunctions that reminded everyone how dependent they were on technology. Most devastating of all, the virus infected the Zephyrian military database, replacing training materials with recordings of human attacks. Every time a Zephyrian officer tried to access tactical information, they saw images of their own ships burning. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez said, broadcasting on all Zephyrian military frequencies, "my name is Elena Vasquez. You may remember me from our first diplomatic contact 8 years ago." Her image appeared on screens across hegemony space. But this was not the hopeful scientist who had first contacted the Zephyrians. This woman's eyes held the cold fire of someone who had lost everything and found something harder than despair. "You dismissed our warnings. You treated us like primitives whose threats were not worth considering. You conquered our world and enslaved our people because you believed your technology made you superior." Behind her, the Bridge of Resurrection showed human crew members working with calm efficiency. These were not desperate refugees. These were professional soldiers who had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. "You were wrong. Technology is not what makes a species strong. Will is what makes a species strong. The determination to never give up, never surrender, never stop fighting for what matters." On the main screen, images began to play. Burning Zephyrian facilities, exploding ships, panicked alien faces as their superior technology failed them. "You taught us that mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. So we learned. We adapted. We became something you cannot understand. Humans with nothing left to lose." The broadcast showed more images. Zephyrian prisoners being treated humanely in human facilities, proving that humanity had not lost its moral compass despite everything. But it also showed the wreckage of alien worlds, proof that human mercy had limits. "Your empire spans 847 star systems. You could have had 848 if you had chosen friendship over conquest. Instead, you chose to teach us that the only language you understand is force." More explosions lit up the screen. More Zephyrian facilities burned. But the most terrifying images were yet to come. "We know everything about your empire. Your patrol schedules, your supply routes, your security codes, your weaknesses. For 5 years, we have watched and learned and prepared." The final image showed a complete map of hegemony space, with human forces marked in red. There were hundreds of them, positioned near every major Zephyrian facility. This is not random terrorism. This is not desperate revenge. This is war fought by humans who have learned to use your own superiority against you. Admiral Kethvar watched the broadcast from his command center, horror growing in his chest. The map showed human forces everywhere, hidden among the asteroids and debris fields that Zephyrian sensors ignored. The attacks you have experienced are just the beginning, Dr. Vasquez continued. We have weapons you cannot detect, tactics you cannot predict, and a determination you cannot break. We are the species that crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. We are the species that splits atoms and bends space to our will. Her voice grew cold with promise. We are humanity, and we are angry. The broadcast ended. Across hegemony space, Zephyrian commanders stared at empty screens, finally understanding the true scope of what they faced. On Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethvar looked up at the red sky and realized that his empire's greatest enemy was not another civilization seeking conquest. It was a species that wanted something far more dangerous than victory. They wanted justice. 6 months after Operation Prometheus began, Admiral Kethvar stood in what remained of his command center on Nexus Prime. The crystal walls were cracked from human attacks. The red sky outside cast bloody light through the damaged ceiling. Around him, the greatest military mind of the Zephyrian hegemony struggled to understand how completely they had been defeated. The reports told a story of impossible destruction. 43 worlds lay in ruins, their surfaces scarred by weapons that should not have existed. The hegemony's once mighty fleet was scattered across the galaxy, too afraid to group together because human forces seemed to know exactly where they would be. Status report, Kethvar said wearily. General Thexala consulted his damaged tablet. Sir, we have lost contact with 17 core systems. The outer colonies report constant harassment from human forces. Our supply lines are completely compromised. What about our fleet? 60% casualties. The surviving ships are requesting permission to retreat to the inner systems, but... Thexala hesitated. But what? Sir, the humans seem to be everywhere. Our captains report that even in systems with no known human presence, their equipment malfunctions at critical moments. They're afraid to trust their own technology. Kethvar understood their fear. The humans had done something worse than destroying Zephyrian ships. They had destroyed Zephyrian confidence in their own superiority. Every piece of technology now seemed suspect. Every routine operation might hide a human trap. The empire that had conquered 847 star systems through overwhelming technological advantage now questioned whether that technology was reliable. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission through Vorthon intermediaries. The humans are requesting a meeting. A meeting? Terms of discussion, sir. They've suggested neutral ground. Kethvar felt something cold settle in his stomach. The humans were not offering surrender. They were demanding his. 2 days later, Kethvar's shuttle landed in the ruins of his own throne room. The massive crystal chamber where he had once planned the conquest of hundreds of worlds was now open to the red sky. Broken walls and shattered decorations spoke of the human attack that had crippled Nexus Prime's defenses. Dr. Elena Vasquez was already waiting for him. She stood in the center of the ruined chamber, wearing simple clothing that looked practical, rather than ceremonial. Behind her, human soldiers in captured Zephyrian armor maintained security. But what struck Kethvar most was her eyes. 5 years ago, Dr. Vasquez had been a hopeful scientist seeking peaceful contact with alien civilizations. The woman who faced him now had been forged in the fire of war and loss. Her eyes held the weight of billions of human deaths and the terrible satisfaction of justice finally served. Admiral Kethvar, she said simply. Dr. Vasquez. He approached. Slowly, his 6 arms spread in a gesture of non-aggression. You wish to discuss terms? I wish to see you understand what you have lost. She gestured to the ruined chamber around them. This was your seat of power, the place where you decided the fate of species across the galaxy. Do you remember what you said when you first received our diplomatic transmission? Kethvar's mandibles clicked nervously. We underestimated your capabilities. No, you underestimated our spirit. She walked to where his throne had once stood. Now only twisted metal remained. You saw our primitive technology and assumed we were weak. You confused our restraint with inability. We made errors in judgment. Dr. Vasquez turned to face him fully. Admiral, you commanded 847 star systems. You could have had 848 if you had chosen friendship over conquest. Your empire could have traded with humanity, learned from us, grown, stronger through cooperation. She paused, letting the weight of that lost opportunity sink in. Instead, you chose to teach us that mercy was a luxury we could not afford. Kethvar felt the truth of her words like physical blows. The hegemony's arrogance had created their own destroyer. By dismissing human threats, they had forced humanity to become exactly the kind of enemy that could destroy them. What do you want? He asked quietly. Justice. She activated a holographic projector that showed the current state of hegemony space. Red zones marked worlds under human control or too damaged to function. Yellow zones showed areas where Zephyrian forces remained but faced constant attack. Green zones, representing secure hegemony territory, were scattered and small. Your empire is finished, Admiral. Not because we destroyed it, but because we proved it was never as strong as you believed. Kethvar studied the map. Even the green zones looked vulnerable. Human forces had demonstrated they could strike anywhere, any time, using weapons and tactics that Zephyrian military doctrine could not counter. The species you conquered are watching, Dr. Vasquez continued. They see that the mighty hegemony can be defeated by a primitive race using superior technology against itself. Some are already declaring independence. Others are forming alliances against you. This was true. Reports had been coming in of rebellions across hegemony space. Species that had accepted Zephyrian rule for centuries now questioned whether their masters were as invincible as they claimed. What are your terms? Kethvar asked. Dr. Vasquez gestured, and human soldiers brought forward a document case. The Soul Accords, she said. Not a peace treaty, terms of surrender. Kethvar read through the document with growing amazement. The terms were surprisingly reasonable for a defeated empire. Zephyrian worlds would be allowed to govern themselves. Their technology would be preserved. Their people would be treated with dignity. But there were conditions. No military forces beyond system defense, he read aloud. No expansion into previously unconquered space. Full reparations to enslaved species. Immediate release of all prisoners. And, Dr. Vasquez prompted, Kethvar found the final clause. Recognition of human space as sovereign territory. All Zephyrian forces to withdraw beyond the established boundary. He looked up at her. You're dividing the galaxy. We're establishing rules. Your empire will survive, Admiral, but it will no longer grow through conquest. Humanity will oversee this sector of space, ensuring that species here develop according to their own choices, rather than Zephyrian preferences. Kethvar considered this. It was humiliating, but it was also survival. The alternative was watching his entire civilization burn as human forces completed their campaign of destruction. And if we refuse? Dr. Vasquez's expression did not change, but somehow her presence became more menacing. Then we continue what we started. 43 worlds have already fallen. We can destroy 43 more, then another 43 after that. We have learned patience, Admiral. We can take as long as necessary to finish this. She stepped closer. But perhaps you would prefer to avoid that outcome. Perhaps you have learned something from watching your empire burn. Kethvar thought about the reports flooding in from across hegemony space. ships destroyed by invisible attackers, facilities sabotaged by untraceable infiltrators, technology that failed at exactly the wrong moments. His people lived in fear of an enemy they could not see or predict. Worse, they lived with the knowledge that their technological superiority was an illusion. Humans had proven that primitive weapons guided by superior tactics could defeat any defense. "I will sign your accords," he said finally. "Good." Dr. Vasquez produced a signing stylus. "But first, I want you to understand something." She walked to the edge of the ruined chamber, where the broken wall looked out over the red landscape of Nexus Prime. "When we first contacted you, we offered friendship. We warned you against aggression because we hoped you would choose a better path. We gave you every opportunity to be the civilization you claim to be." She turned back to him. "You chose conquest instead. You chose to see our warnings as threats to be dismissed rather than wisdom to be considered. You forced us to become the enemy you deserved." Kethavar approached the document, stylus in hand. "There is one more thing," Dr. Vasquez said. "Children on Earth are learning about this war through holographic displays. They see the burning worlds, the destroyed fleets, the fallen empire, and their teachers explain humanity's greatest lesson to the galaxy." She watched as he signed the Sol Accords, formally ending the Zephyrian hegemony's age of expansion. "What lesson?" Kethavar asked. Dr. Vasquez smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Never mistake restraint for weakness. When humans say, 'Please don't make us angry,' they're giving you one chance to avoid learning why that's good advice." Outside, the red sky of Nexus Prime began to fade as Dr. Park's biological weapon finally cleared from the atmosphere. But the lesson would remain. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear of Zephyrian conquest now told stories of the humans who refused to accept defeat. They spoke of Earth's children, scattered among the stars, carrying the message that no empire was too mighty to fall if it chose arrogance over wisdom. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be very different from what came before.